Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Chema Stitches and my name is Chema. Today we're going to be making a beautiful ruched gown with lantern sleeves, and for this project I am going to be working with a satin fabric called Duchess, and this can be found in your fabric shops. If this sounds like something you'll be interested in, please keep watching and don't forget to subscribe. I want to welcome all the old subscribers. You guys are welcome back to the channel, and for the new subscribers, you're also very welcome. And if you're seeing this channel for the first time, I hope you decide to subscribe and stick around with us. Don't forget to leave a comment in the comment section. See you guys at the end of the video. So I have my tape rule, my pattern paper for the drafting. I have the satin fabric I'm working with. I have a matching zipper and matching thread. Now for this zipper, I didn't get the exact color that I wanted, but it's pretty close, and that's why I'm working with it. Of course, you need your marker to draft on your pattern paper, your chalk to draft on the fabric, your scissors. I have my fabric scissors and my pattern paper scissors. You have to have two different scissors for this project. Don't use your fabric scissors to cut your paper to make the scissors blunt, okay? So I have a separate scissors for my pattern paper and another for the fabric. I also have my rulers here, the curved ruler and this one that can serve as both a curved ruler and also as a straight ruler. Okay, so let's get straight into the drafting. We're going to be starting off with the lantern sleeve. For you to get a very good lantern sleeve, I like to also work with a length that is maybe 2 inches longer than the actual length of the sleeve you want. If your sleeve length is say 23 inches, I would recommend that you work with 25 inches to give it that relaxation, so that the sleeve will relax and curve in at the edge. Okay, so that's something you should note. So I folded my fabric into 2 and I folded it again, so I have it folded into 4 right now, which means I'll be cutting both sleeves together. Now the quantity of fabric you fold in will determine how full your lantern sleeve is going to be. So if you want it to be very dramatic, do well to include that in your fabric. Now the full length of this sleeve I am working with is 23 inches, and because it's going to be a lantern sleeve, I have to add my 2 inches for the length to curve in, okay, and then 1 inch for the elastic. All right, so I can as well go ahead and make it 26.5 inches in total. You're going to be cutting the armhole of the sleeve the way you cut your basic sleeve. Okay, so to get your sleeve base, you divide your bust measurement by 12, and for 36 divided by 12 I have 3 inches, so I am working with 3 inches. And then to get your armhole, the size of your armhole, you divide your bust measurement by 6 and add 1.5 inches to it. And for this I have 7.5 inches. And now I'm going to be slanting this line, this sleeve base, and I will get the middle of this slanted line. I'll mark it out, and then I'm going to go up by half of an inch or 0.3 inches or 0.25 inches, and I'm going to use my armhole curve to curve this. Now if it's a fitted sleeve, you might have to differentiate between the front and the back. I will not be doing this here. I'm just going to be working with only the back measurement, and then I'm going to connect this with my curve like so. All right, now for your lantern sleeve, it starts off as if it wants to be fitted, and then it builds up to give you the lantern effect. And so what we have here is 7.5 inches. I can add my sewing allowance. I can add say a sewing allowance of say 1.5 inches. Now I'm adding this because the armhole is not going to be completely fitted when we sew it. You can give it a little bit of ease of half of an inch and then sew with say 1 inch. Okay, that is for the particular dress we are making, but otherwise just sew it the way you normally sew. Okay, and then for the base, for the hem of the sleeve, I am going to be using all the fabric I have here. This is about 12.5 inches. So I am going to go ahead and connect this like so. So I'm using the whole of this for this lantern sleeve. Now your lantern sleeve can be wider, can be bigger than this, depending on how full you want it to be. So now we can go ahead and cut out this sleeve. And at the top here, I'm going to be adding my sewing allowance of 1/2 inch. So I cut both sleeves together. That is why we have 4 folds here. I'm going to set the sleeve aside. So for the full length of this gown, we are working with 46 inches and the half length is going to be 17.5 inches. So what is left is going to be the length of the skirt part. So what I have is 28.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and mark out the length for this. I'm going to be including the hemming allowance. So I'm going to be adding 1 inch to this 28.5 inches. So I'm going to be having 29.5 inches. Now when you're taking your measurement for a gown, you have to measure from your shoulder to your hip line. It's important, okay? So from here, I'm going to be placing my tape on the 17.5 inches. This is assumably our half length, okay? And then from there, you can now get your shoulder to the hip line. And for this, we're working with 27 inches. So I like to give another line where I start to curve in. So from the hip, I can come down to say 9 inches. So this is where I start to pencil the skirts. So for the hip, we are working with a hip 40 inches, which will give us 10 inches when you divide it by 4. So 40 divided by 4 will give you 10 inches. And the waist is 32 inches. Divided by 4 will be 8 inches. I am eliminating a dart here. I'm not adding that to this skirt drafting, okay? And then for here, what we have here is 10 inches. I can come here and mark out depending on how pencil you want it to be. Since the hip is 10 inches here, I'm going to come here and mark out 9.3 or 9.5 inches. And I'm going to come down, and as I'm going down, I'm going to reduce it. This is for when you are working with a pencil skirt, okay? As you go down, you are going to pencil it more, okay? So down here, I am going to come up back and mark out 8.8 inches or 8.75. So I'm going to connect these lines and try to smoothen them. So this is the hip, this is the waist, and this is the hip half length, as I call it. Alright, so here I am going to be imputing my sewing allowance on this pattern because the fabric we are working with is satin. Sometimes it can be silky and move a lot, so you can just include the allowance on your pattern. This is a choice as well. So I'm adding a sewing allowance of 1.5 inches. So I like to add 1.5 inches in case of someone whose body size tends to fluctuate, so that if you have to readjust your dress, there will be allowance for you to adjust it, okay? And also I like to add my joining allowance. It is the 1/2 inch I'm going to use to join the skirt part to the upper bodice. I am going to go ahead and include it here. And then when you do that, you will come down from your measurements to give us that curve around the waistline. So from the waistline, I like to come down by, you can use 1 inch or 0.75 inches. And I'm going to go ahead and connect this like so with my curved ruler and just slant it. So I'm going to be cutting out that part. Now this pattern paper, I am going to use it to cut out both the front and the back. So when I'm cutting out the back, I am going to be adding my 1 inch zip allowance. Pattern paper scissors. Now the upper bodice is 17.5 inches. I am also going to be adding our 1/2 inch for joining, so I'll be marking at 18 inches. So I'm going to impute the shoulder measurement, 7.5 inches. I'm going to come down by 1 inch for shoulder slanting. And then I'm going to mark out the armhole, which is the bust measurement divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. 36 inches divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches is going to give us 7.5. So I'm marking out 7.5 from here. So this is a total of 8.5. So I'm just going to connect that line, mark it out, the armhole sitting. This is the armhole sitting, and I'm going to connect this one as well. From here, I am going to get the middle of this because I'm using the same pattern for both the front and the back. So bear with me. And I'm going to be marking in here by 1/2 of an inch. Connect it to your shoulder slanting, and then curve the armhole. Now at this point, you can now decide what kind of neckline you want. And for this neckline, I am working with a round neckline. So I'm just going to divide the bust measurement by 12. And what I have is 3 inches. So I'm going to use 3 inches by 3 inches for the front. And I will use 3 inches by 1/2 of an inch for the back. Like I said, I'm using the same pattern for both the front and the back. So I'm going to be marking out all the measurements here, and I will alter it when I am transferring to fabric. So pay attention. So I'm going to slant the armhole now. You can measure your shoulder to the bust measurement. So for here, I have shoulder to the bust measurement to be 10.5 inches. So I have 10.5 here. Shoulder to the under bust is 15. 36 divided by 4 is going to give us 9 inches. Now 32 inches divided by 4 for the waistline is 8 inches. If you add your dart measurement of 1 inch, you have 9 inches. Now to mark out your under bust, first you are going to take out your darts, okay? Before you impute your measurement for your under bust, take out the dart so that you know how much of an allowance you can add under the bust, okay? So for the bust measurement, I use the bust point, which is the nipple to nipple measurement, and I'm just going to take it to the bust like so. Connect it. Now since our dart is a 1 inch dart, we're going to be taking out 1/2 an inch on each side, and I'm going to rule this 1/2 an inch all the way to the bust point. The under bust is 13 inches. 30 divided by 4 is 7.5 inches. Okay, note 7.5 here. Now you will now add what you will be taking out for the dart. When you take out your dart, we have here 0.6. I am going to add 0.6 to this. Now this is now your actual under bust, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and connect these lines like so and like so. And I'm going to smoothen out any pointed edges, okay? And then I can just go ahead and rule this all the way, slanting it a bit to the armhole. Now this is a pattern. There is no zip allowance here, so I'm going to be adding it when I'm transferring to fabric. So whatever allowance you add, just be very observant and cautious so you don't repeat it in the fabric when you are transferring to fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out this pattern now. And I have already put my scissors, so I'm just going to go ahead and tape it down back. So for the sewing allowance, I am going to add the same 1.5 inch I added to the skirt part. You can also add your 1/2 an inch for the armhole, 1/2 of an inch at the shoulder for the shoulder joining. I cut out the neckline for the back first, so I'm going to first cut out the back pieces before I can cut out the front pieces. Okay, as you can see, I moved my fabric and to add 1 inch for the zip allowance. Note that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. I like to come in here by 1/2 of an inch for the zip, from the top here, 1/2 of an inch, and then you can come down to up to 4 inches. Because we have sewing allowance here, I'm going to come down to 4.5 inches, and I'm going to slant it. I'm going to connect it like you're taking out a dart at the back. This is to help your zip relax and also to eliminate those bulginess at the back. I'm going to cut it out. Note that when you are sewing your zip, you will still use the same 1 inch to sew. And then here I also like to cut out this waistline you have here. This thing I have for the front piece, I am going to be cutting out for the back piece as well. But for the back piece, I'm not going to go as low as I've gone for the front piece, okay? So I'm just going to be taking it out. Instead of taking out the 0.8 that I have here, I'm going to take out 0.5. So open up your pattern, because this is the back. Okay, so this is the back pattern. And so for the back piece, for the upper bodice, I'm going to also go ahead and cut it out. Also note that I added the 1 inch zip allowance for the upper bodice as well. Okay, and then I'm going to also take out the 1/2 inch for the waist tightening and to eliminate zip bulginess. Okay, so I'm going to be marking out 1/2 inch here as well. Unlike the back piece, unlike the lower bodice, I'm not going to be going up by only 4 inches. I am going to slant it all the way to the bust area or even the chest line. So I'm just going to go ahead and slant it like so. And I'll cut it out. Then open up your zip line. Also do well to cut out a facing for the back piece, okay? A piece of fabric you're going to use to cover the neckline. And now for the front piece, I'm going to be taking out the front neckline. The front piece is going to be very free, unlike the back piece that you are going to be taking out that, and it will have like the back of this dress is going to look completely different from the front. So note that. So the back, for this front piece, we are going to be adding some allowance, and for this I'm just going to go ahead and fold my pattern in half like so, and I'm just going to open it up from there. Okay, now what this means is that at the shoulder line there will be allowance. I'll be pleating the shoulder line of this front piece. Okay, and I'm going to transfer this to the fabric. Okay, so for this front piece now, after dividing it, I just placed on my pattern and I gave a space at the shoulder line here. This place I'm going to be folding it, like pleating it in when I am sewing it. Note that. And then this opening here is going to give us the free part of the upper parts. Okay, now what I want to also take note of is I don't want this curve here to stay. Since this place is going to be gathered, I'm going to be eliminating this part by just taking out here. You see why we have to cut out our back pattern first before using the same pattern to cut out the front, because the front has a little bit of alterations. Okay, now depending on how free you want the front piece to be, this opening you can go as wide as you want. Okay, so I'm just going to connect these lines. I'm going to be connecting here like so. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out this. Now to transfer the pattern to fabric for the front part, there's going to be some other alterations as well, so I'm going to be carrying us along. So this part of the front piece is not going to have the ruched effect. I'm just going to rule it, because this will show us what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm ruling this part because I'll be cutting out. You can decide how much of it you want to have ruched effect. That is completely up to you. Okay, so I am going to be dividing this pattern, this front piece, into patterns. Okay, now this is because the allowance I'm going to be adding to it will not be the same all through, because I'm going to be adding a bit of allowance to it until I have gathered it. When I gather it, I will use the same pattern to put it together. So I'm going to be adding excess allowance to the part that is going to be having the ruched effect. Now after I have gathered it, I will now use this pattern as well to coordinate it to make sure it has come back to the measurement that I am working with. Okay, so bear with me and be patient. Let's do this together. Okay, all right, so now this part is going to be having, it's not going to have the ruched effect, so we're not going to be adding excess allowance to it, to this side. I'm going to be cutting this exactly the way it is. Now from here to here is going to be having a different kind of allowance. Okay, I'm going to divide this pattern into different pieces. Okay, so here this is going to be the hip 2, or this is a And here I'm going to be marking out here as well. So this is going to be like hip 1. Ignore these markings, ignore this, okay? This is going to be our 1, here is going to be 2, and here will be 3, and this will be 4. Okay, let me cut these pieces out and show us what I am blabbing about. Okay, so let's start with this last part. So I am not going to be adding sewing allowance to this last part, like I said. So let me pin it. So this is the last part, right? Now the next one, I am going to be giving space between this last part and this part. So this space is going to be gathered. These are part of the ruched effect. Okay, so here I will pin it here, and then here too, for this other part, I'll be giving it allowance as well. So all of this place is going to be working as like the hip. Okay, so I'm going to give it this gathered ruched effect. So these spaces I'm leaving is going to determine how much ruched effect is going to give me. So I'm thinking of extending this. Let me take this one higher, as much gathers as it can gather. So now you see the whole part here. I am going to be adding extra allowance to this, and this extra allowance is to give me room to work with. Okay, so this extra allowance, I am going to take it out after I gather it, so note that. And then here I am not going to have extra allowance over here. I'm just going to come down here and just cut it out. So here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to first take out my pins. And so guys, first I am going to start with running a loose stitch. I'm going to start running a loose stitch here on the sides of this front piece, both sides. I'm going to run a loose stitch all the way here and here first, and then I'm going to put these pieces back. I'm going to put these pieces back and tape it together. So here I've gone ahead to run a loose stitch on the sides. Okay, I'll put my pattern back together and I've used the tape to hold it together. So I'm just going to measure the part that I don't want to have the ruched effect. Okay, I'm just going to mark it. So I'm going to go ahead and gather this to meet this length, so that everything will come back to this length. Okay, it is now the same length with this side. Okay, and this is the part I said I don't want to have the ruched effect, and this is the part that will have a ruched effect. So I'm going to go ahead and top stitch here to hold it together, okay, so it doesn't lose. And I'll leave this place bare like this. I'm going to also go ahead and gather here as well to give it this, so it will be the same length with this side. So I've done this. I've top stitched it to keep it in place. Next is this one, the upper bodice, the front upper bodice. So now I am going to also run a loose stitch on this one. I am going to run a loose stitch on the waistline, and then I am going to be sewing the neckline with the facing I have cut out. I cut out a facing for this, and I'm going to go ahead and sew this neckline and top stitch it. And the back piece, I also cut a neckline for it, but I will be using this neckline to conceal the zipper, so I'm not sewing the neckline yet, but I'm going to go ahead and take out the darts for the back pieces. So I've taken out the darts for the back pieces, taking out the darts, and for the front piece I have run the loose stitch on the waistline, and also I have faced the neckline using the facing, the piece for the facing. Okay, so now I'm going to be attaching it to the lower bodice. So I'm going to find the middle for this one. Now remember that we added excess allowance to the side of this one. So that excess allowance, I am not going to use it to sew the top here, because I know what we have here is supposed to be 9.5. So I'm going to mark out 9.5 here. That is where this is going to be stopping, because this other part we are going to be cutting it off when we are done sewing. Okay, so I'm going to also find the middle of this one, and I'm going to merge it together and pin it. Okay, now I am going to hold down the end of this one onto the 9.5 here and pin it as well. Do the same thing on the other side. Now we are going to go ahead and pull and gather this until it becomes the same measurement with the waistline. You can tie it to secure it so that the gather will not loose. Repeat the same thing on the other side. Now I'm going to go ahead and take it to the machine, and I will join the waistline, and I will also join the waistline for the back piece. So here I have gone ahead to sew it. Look at the effect it has given. It's a bit gathered here and not too much. I've also joined the waistline for the back pieces, and also I have measured my zip allowance, the space that my zip can take, and where it stops is here, and I've gone ahead to sew here up to this place. This remaining side is going to be our slit, and to keep your slit neat, you can go ahead and hem the slit. Just fold it in twice and hem the slit to keep it neat. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and sew the zipper. So I have attached the zipper, and I just pinned down the slit so that it will be secured for when I join the front and the back pieces together. But now I am going to go ahead and sew the neckline for the back piece, and to do that I will be using it to conceal the zipper this way. So I'm going to go ahead and sew it, sew the neckline, and then sew it here a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to be joining this and this together. And like I said, the shoulder line, the shoulder for the front piece is wider than the shoulder of the back piece, and so for that we are going to be pleating part of the front piece. Okay, so the shoulder for this front piece, you are going to be pleating in a little. You are going to go ahead and measure it to be sure that what you've taken in is perfect. Okay, and I can see what I took in here is perfect, so I'm just going to pin it down. And I'll do the same thing here. And so I've joined the shoulders. Next I am going to be attaching the sleeve. Sew it, go ahead and sew from one end to the other. So I've sewn the sleeves. Next I am going to be joining the sides. Now that is why I held these places, the slits together, so I can use the slits to correct the excess allowance I added to the front piece. And now for this front piece, I would like all these excesses not to slope down. For it not to slope downwards, I am going to pleat it this way forward. So I'm going to pleat it forward so that when you sew on it, it will come this way. So here I've pleated it all forward like so. So now we're going to cover it with the back piece and match it and pin it down waistline to waistline. Now I am going to be placing this back piece in the center so that the excesses from this is going to come out on the sides. Okay, so these excesses will come out on the side, and when you sew it, you can now trim out the excesses. So I'm going to be pinning it together. Okay, so I've pinned it all together, and I'm going to go ahead and sew the sides, starting from the sleeve all the way to the end, and I'm going to hem the edges, hem the slits. Okay, so I've gone ahead to join the sides, as you can see, and after which this place kept sloping downwards. So what I did was put in hemming gum in between the pleats and ironed it to keep it down. So you make your pleats bold enough that your hemming gum can go in between, and ironed it to keep it flat. So you still have the pleats, but you won't see any seam line. You will just see notice that it is laying flat. That's the hemming gum keeping it together. That is the technique I devised to be able to keep it together, and it came out nice. Okay, also I'm going to go ahead and hem here, and I'll pass my elastic inside to keep it like so. And this is the back. This is the back slit. I have hemmed the back slit and ironed it, as you can see. Okay, so I've ironed all the sides. So I'm going to go ahead and hem the sleeve, add my elastic, and then I'll put it on the mannequin and show us how it looks. If at this point, guys, you are yet to subscribe to this channel, what are you waiting for? Please go ahead and like this video, and also subscribe so that I keep giving you this content. And also you can also share this video so that this community can grow. I would appreciate that very much. See you guys in my next sewing tutorial. Bye bye.